Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Coming to you through a pirate relay from the corporate sector, bounced through Hutt space and all the way into the Inner Rim and then back out again. It's Aggressive Negotiations, your Star Wars podcast on the Nerd Party Network that just doesn't know when to let up and loves the controversial topics. You'll know what I mean by that when we get into it. I'm Jedi Master John Mills, here with my dear friend and constant companion, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Are we ready to roll? Like, what are we doing here? Are we all set for getting controversial this week?
I think we're pretty set, John. It looks like the Dejeric board is set. We have the Corellian brandy and whiskey on hand. The only thing that we have to do is to ask people to follow us over on social media. On X, Twitter, we're at the Jedi Masters, the entire network, at Join Nerd Party. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Nerd Party. We're online at nerdparty.com. Of course, you can find us on Instagram at the Nerd Party. And guys, it's really important. We would not ask for this if it didn't matter. But, hit us up with a star rating review over there on Apple Podcasts and help people know that you like the show. If you think our show should grow, please give us a review. And you can also share us on social media. Honestly, the best way for podcasts to grow is a recommendation from a friend. And so if you like Star Wars and you know they do too, say, hey, have you heard Aggressive Negotiations? They're going to want to hear this topic, John, because we were batting around ideas.
Yes, we were. We do that from time to time.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. If people only knew how much we talk, even though we live thousands of miles away, it's funny. But one of the things that we were kind of discussing, and this it kind of is tangentially connected to the fact that the Acolyte just ended. Of course, we got the trailer as well for Skeleton Crew coming out. We know that they're filming The Mandalorian and Grogu. We got wind from Dragon Con, from, I can't remember her name, who plays Sabine. I believe her name's Natasha something, that they're going to be shooting season 2 of Ahsoka after they finish Grogu and Mando film, which I think is in the summer. And of course, we know Andor season 2 is coming out next year as well. So with all of this in mind, it kind of just led me to be thinking, and us to be thinking, just kind of the state of, Disney Star Wars. And so I guess maybe the best way to start is kind of like judge where we are just now and what's come out.
That's fair. That's fair. And the thing is, as we were talking about this, I started thinking about it. If I may, I'm going to go off on a little rabbit hole here before we really start the meat of the discussion here, where we get into our personal takes on certain sorts of things. Because I really want to pose this to you, that people get very dramatic and like, oh, it's so terrible to be Star Wars fan because of this reason. And then people think it's terrible because there are people that say it's terrible because of this, blah, blah, blah. And people go back and forth online because that's not reality. To quote so many different people, but most especially William Shatner in a legendary Saturday Night Live sketch, it's just a TV show. Basically, I think that we are experiencing an odd sort of growing pain. Growing pain feels wrong, but it's the only phrase I can think of, wherein we're living through or have lived through the transition of Star Wars from being a singular auteur's expression of worldview into a franchise. And do you think it's possible that a lot of the online vitriol we see going back and forth is because people are having trouble resetting themselves to understand that it's inevitable that when you become a franchise like this, it's inevitable that you're just going to have to accept that there are things you really like and things you don't like and things that you like that other people don't, and vice versa?
I think that's a really salient point. Because I was thinking about this as you were talking, I was like, one of the differences between Star Wars now and then was that when the films were coming out, they were coming out every 3 years. And then there was a long lull, of course, between the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy. The only thing that fans had to go on was the EU and video games. So when you think about now, I mean, it is a very different milieu that we're in. I mean, because we're in the business of milking franchises. I mean, that's just what these big corporations do. We've seen it with Marvel. We've seen it with DC. And, you've seen it with every single franchise. I mean, gosh, the Alien franchise, John, for some reason is still going. So I think your point is incredibly well made there. And I think it's a great place to just kind of start that conversation because I do think you have to be in that mindset that with all of the content that's coming out in the Disney universe now for something like Star Wars, I'm probably not going to like it all because it's not all under the same banner in the sense that it's not being made by George Lucas, who is firmly ensconced at the top, and everything that came out was through him. And now there are remnants of him and his teachings as per on how to make Star Wars that we've seen, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But no, I think you're 100% right to actually bring that up, that yes, we are in a different place where Star Wars is not going to be something that I just like all the time.
And I think that additionally, there's an aspect to all of this where it's silly to think that everybody loved everything that was released in the EU before. You and I have talked about it. Like when Disney announced that they were erasing the EU, I almost took gleeful pleasure in taunting people about it because I had hit a point where I was done with the EU. I was like, this has gone too far. But do you think it's possible that the trouble now is that Disney finds itself in turning this franchise into a true franchise model, but by doing that, it takes away the personal connection that people have? Like, I could choose to read or not read or ignore or accept anything that came out in book format or game format, but I could, especially, you mentioned video games, I could put myself into the video game. I could believe that was me up there, that I was playing along. And I could even ignore The Force Unleashed 2, which was one of the most god-awful game sequels ever created. No disrespect intended to anybody that worked on it, but that one didn't pan out too well. So do you think it's just that everybody's been used to having that outlet of relating to Star Wars on a very personal level? Now that's put in an arena where some of that personalization is taken away for their experience.
I mean, I think you're right. And it really does come back. I think we're both just coming at it from a slightly different angle. But the idea of like Star Wars itself was a very personal enterprise because it is so wrapped up in who George Lucas was and is, and the people who helped him create it, right? I mean, there's bits of Lawrence Kasdan in there, there's bits of his friends, like, you can see little moments of where Spielberg might have had an influence, or, but it's all very much wrapped up in who George is, and his influences as well, which, Dave Filoni has talked extensively about, especially in a recent interview he did on a podcast, where he said, if you're going to make Star Wars, you have to study George Lucas, and you have to study the things that George Lucas loved. But if you're going to make Star Wars, he's like, you not only have to watch Star Wars, but you need to watch American Graffiti and THX 1138.
100%.
And then, of course, you probably need to watch the films that he was most inspired by, like the Kurosawa type of films and those type of things. And so, yes, I think your pinpointing of the idea that Star Wars was an incredibly personal thing makes sense because, just we're just going to focus specifically on what's been on screen. This does not negate the work done by people who have brought things into comics or in book form, which we have mentioned copious amounts of times in the show. You know, things like Timothy Zahn's new series that he did with the Thrawn Ascendancy and those type of things, right? But so Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, Solo, a Star Wars Story, The Rise of Skywalker, Ahsoka, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, The Acolyte, Season 7 of The Clone Wars, Tales of the Jedi, Rebels, Tales of the Empire, Vision Season 1 and 2, Resistance, Forces of Destiny. So all of these things have come out under the Star Wars banner in what was it, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, or whatever that they bought?
12, yeah, 2012, and we're recording this in 2024. Yeah, you're right.
So it's 12, right. So all that content, though, has come out in the last 12 years when specifically, you know, you think of what you would have gotten under George Lucas, maybe where you're doing like one film every 3 years. We might have gotten maybe 6 films at most, possibly if they had continued, maybe just, you know, who knows? So, I mean, in that, I think your discussion of the idea of things being personal, I do think that there are things on this list to where the reason I get the sense of them fitting with the Star Wars milieu as it was given to us by Lucas, one is because they understand those influences like Filoni mentioned, and two, because they're personal. But I think you have to have both. You can't just have one. It can't just be personal for you, but you're kind of negating Lucas. And it can't just be you're doing, you know, what Lucas would do, but you're also negating something personal. I think those are the two things that you really need.
And the thing is that this is my controversial thing. I'm not opening this can of worms again, but this is what makes me the outlier, is because I think that there are aspects, for instance, of Rogue One that I feel are too imitative as opposed to expressive. And that's why I've always had more trouble than apparently a lot of the fan base that loved Rogue One. But, you know, you go through that list of stuff and you're absolutely right with your read of what makes a project sing or not sing for the bulk of the audience. I mean, there's always going to be people that hate what comes out. People hated the prequels. I grew up with people hating, quote unquote, Return of the Jedi. I had people who hated the Thrawn books. I had friends who hated the idea of them doing anything after Return. Like, there were so many things people have disliked over time or loved over time. But when you go through that list, what drives me crazy is the histrionics that accompany each new project that comes out now. Because when you go through this list, first and foremost, look at the number of projects we've gotten in 12 years.
Yeah.
So many that we're going to get to the point where we forget them. But then when I go through this list of projects, the batting average is pretty darn good. Even the stuff I was lukewarm on, I still like the message. For instance, Kenobi. Wasn't crazy about the series overall. It was stretched a bit thin, all of these problems, but there was still a core to it that I could respond to. So I can see the positive in that. Are there things I really didn't enjoy? Yeah, I think I was a little too kind to Book of Boba Fett when it first came out. I really have to give it a rewatch. I just haven't gotten around to. We talked about The Acolyte and everything like that. And obviously I had my issues with the sequel trilogy, but Solo: A Star Wars Story is one of my favorite Star Wars projects ever released. Clone Wars Season 7, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, Bad Batch, for Pete's sake. Good grief. Bad Batch is some of the best Star Wars that I've seen in my entire life. And Vision Season 1 and Season 2, there were some positive gems in there because they did something a little different. They stretched for it. They went for it. They went for something crazy. Okay, I'm on board. But do you think it's just a product of the way everybody's wired now, that they don't understand? Like, I look at this list, and again, there were books that I loved and books that I hated. There was a point where I tapped out, but I still read some of them. Like, I never gave up on prequel era books. I kept reading those, sort of thing. I mean, what's your impression of the batting average here? Like, wouldn't you look at this and be like, you look at this list, you're like, this is actually a pretty successful franchise in terms of projects that you liked.
Yeah, I feel like the batting average is probably a 60-40, which is not terrible. And, you were talking about the histrionics of things, and what really led me to kind of going down a rabbit hole in my own mind when you said that was just, the history of rushing things. And I think that's one of the things that obviously I think has hurt Star Wars in that sense, is that they rushed the sequel trilogy. They were rushing things with Solo, a Star Wars story. They weren't bringing in, I think, they're doing the same thing that Marvel started to do, which is like we bring in the hip new director, regardless of whether or not they kind of really understand the franchise or anything.
Cough. Taika Waititi. Cough.
Yeah. And yet, like you mentioned, you've got things like what that has been done in the animation with, I think of, they started out a little rocky with Rebels, and Dave found a way to find his way into that really, and basically take it over and then do what he wanted to do. And it became incredible. They finally gave us season 7 of the Clone Wars, The Bad Batch, Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi. I mean, those all together create some of the best Star Wars ever. But part of that, and I think, we've praised the animation over and over again, but one of the reasons I think that animation really works is that a majority of the people in the animation department were people who had been taught by Lucas. And a lot of them that are still there are acolytes of Lucas, to use that phrase, right? And because of that, there is the personal investment. There's the understanding of Star Wars and the Lucasian model, and you put both of those things together, and that's what makes those stories work, right? And so, and I think it's one of those things where, like you mentioned, the Book of Boba Fett, so I think that's a great example, right? Rodriguez definitely cares about the character and loves the character, but there's a sense in this where it's almost like a fan who's been given the ability to play with the toys, but is making up a story that just makes him happy instead of one that kind of feels like it fits within the broader spectrum of the saga, which Star Wars is incredibly important in this, is that even maybe more so almost than Star Trek. Everything is meant to interwork together in this universe, and you can do a lot of different things in it, but everything needs to really fit together to be telling an overarching story. And I think this is where it comes into that when we mentioned all of those things happening in animation. I think the key to most of those, and then something like The Mandalorian working or Ahsoka, comes down to Filoni.
Well,
He's
I
the
think
thread there.
Filoni's definitely a thread, but I think you're more right in pointing that there's more than just Dave Filoni. There are a lot of people who are still there.
Yeah.
But I think that the challenge is that I think it's also possible. I mean, at this point, when we're recording this, I'm highly confident that the Mandalorian and Grogu movie will come out.
I mean, they are filming it right now, so yes.
And then now, hang on. Anything can happen.
But this is true.
But I think
don't think they're gonna fire that director, though. I think he's got a real in.
At this point, I'm not even ruling out meteorites. Okay, Imperial activity. They could be launching probe droids, what have you. But I think that there's a mix here that maybe they're finding their balance, and this is why I'm always hopeful about the projects. I think. Let's set aside the histrionics of anybody who's starting a petition to save the Acolyte, or somebody who thinks that the Acolyte means that Star Wars is dead forever. Let's take those histrionics out. They started off movies heavy, and that didn't really work the way they wanted to. And to move it outside of the more painful recent discussions, Book of Boba Fett, people weren't nuts about. But we don't really talk about it too much anymore. It's in the rearview mirror. I think it's possible that these streaming/TV series are easier for us to move forward from. So maybe we're seeing some indication that they figured out the trick is to be streaming series, do the content flood that way, and that way the movies can remain special. And then if you've built this giant universe of streaming series, you've built the guardrails necessary so that when you do make a movie, you've given a very clear map of the boundaries where you can go. It's not blue sky anymore. It's we've built the structure. This is the playground you're playing in. If you would like to play a different game, you can also go next door to Marvel, or you can go next door to what other franchises do they own now? I mean, I don't want to be cruel and suggest the Muppets because they've basically strangled that franchise to death. Yeah. But shots fired. I know Disney, come at me, but I'm still mad about the Muppets. I mean, do you think they found the secret sauce that you make the bulk of your stuff streaming and then your movies are once in a while and special?
Yeah. You know what? I actually think that they have found the secret sauce, and I think what you're saying is correct. But I'm gonna add to that secret sauce another ingredient, which is they're kind of beginning to give fans what they always wanted, right? These series, especially that are all connected, are taking place in a time that fans were always incredibly interested in, and what they're doing is because, the sequel trilogy kind of went one way, they can't really do a lot of things that they might have done, but they're coming at it from a slightly different angle now, right? And so to me, that seems to be one of the things that they seem to have possibly learned, which is stop trying to be cute. And just give people what they want, right? And because fans will then respond to that. And it's not exactly what we want, because I don't think anybody realized what they wanted was Baby Yoda until we got it, right? And so it's this thing where we're warning fans, but at the same time, we're also challenging them. And I think that's the important lesson here. And so to bring this, we're going to jump real quick to another Star franchise, right? But you just recently watched Star Trek Picard Season 3.
Brilliant. Terry Matalas deserves medals, awards, a new car.
And he deserves to be in charge of Star Trek.
And Alex Kurtzman should paint his house as well while we're at it.
But right, like the point I'm making here is that show gave Star Trek fans everything that they wanted and everything they didn't know they did want. It challenged them. It took things in directions they weren't necessarily expecting. All of that. But it was incredibly beautiful to watch fans of Star Trek from all over the globe kind of come together around this show that they ended up absolutely loving. And I think in some ways that's kind of what we're getting in Star Wars. And one of the reasons I had kind of brought this topic to you is because what I see here is that when you have Ahsoka, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, all playing together, and we know Skeleton Crew also takes place in the same time period in the same part of the universe that all of those shows do. All of that is working together, and what it seems to be is that they have found their place to truly kind of like push the Star Wars envelope forward right now. Obviously, the other side of that is you have a massive critical hit and an excellent show in Andor, right? And part of that is, again, I think the success of that show, the fans of that show, like myself, that's one of those things where it's like you've got somebody who understands how to craft a truly good story because they have worked on both seasons together from start to finish. They know where they're going. They know where they're ending. And everything is working together to craft an entire whole. And And then it's incredibly well produced. It's one of the best looking shows. It actually is one of the best looking things Star Wars has done to date. And it was a television show. So, that's kind of an outlier here. But again, I think you've got this connecting piece of all of these three shows. And I think the larger aspect of that is the way in which the animated series have now been used to help kind of create the mortar that keeps Star Wars together and is taking the disparate elements, especially from like the sequel trilogy, and tying them all the way back to the prequel trilogy so things feel as cohesive as they possibly can.
Well, I mean, if you're going to set up a connected universe, it has to feel connected. That's for sure. I think that this is what's interesting because it's an easy trap to fall into to say, oh, you need somebody who, quote unquote, understands Star Wars, which implies somebody who has been a devoted fan or worked on on different series or something like that. But we all know by his own admission that Tony Gilroy wasn't really a Star Wars guy before he worked on Rogue One.
Right.
And he still isn't really like a steeped in the lore kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so long as you have a creative element on the show that does understand that sort of tying together with a larger lore, which in that case seems to be the actor producer Diego Luna on there. So long as you have that voice that says, well, that's a Star Wars-y thing, or this is how you make your great idea
right
about how a society falls, or write this great monologue. That's how you can change this word here or there, or couch it in such a way that Star Wars fans will say, oh, this is part of our playground.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you need is you need somebody on each project, and they can be an actor producer. They can be just they can be an executive producer, but so long as somebody is there doing what Lucas did when he was actively involved, which is to be the one to look at it and say, okay, but here's how we tweak this. Here's how we make it so it fits. And so it's not a requisite that somebody's a huge Star Wars fan. If anything, I think that some of the lessons we should take from some of the projects that have been deemed less successful are that be wary of the person who fancies themselves a big Star Wars fan coming in to work on the project.
No,
that
I
doesn't
agree with
necessarily
that.
translate it to, I love ice cream. You do not want me to make ice cream for you. I love steak. You do not want me to cook your steak. Trust me.
I think that what you're saying here is again, incredibly important, because one of the things that makes Gilroy great is that the man understands how to write a tight story.
Mm-hmm.
He understands how to write a great story. He understands what makes stories great, which was interesting characters. It's the struggle that they're in. It's all of these things, right? He gets all of that. Again, to use Star Trek as an example, Star Trek Nemesis is kind of a huge dud because Stuart Baird takes out all of the things that make Star Trek and just creates a generic action film. Then that doesn't work. Whereas if he had just allowed them to have somebody be there and be like, hey, you need to have this, you need to do that, that's the thing that Gilroy's willing to do. He's willing to have the person say, hey, change that line to this, or hey, we need to have this reference here. And it's like, that's what makes it work, is because he's willing to do that. And that's what makes the show great. You have a fantastic plot and characters, and then you've got the Star Wars feel. You put it all together and it creates something magical.
And you have additionally instances where, and I can't ever resist the urge to do this, but you could have something like Star Trek Insurrection, where everybody on there loves Star Trek, has worked on Star Trek, knows all about Star Trek, and the project still goes wrong. Did that mean that I forswore Star Trek? Did I kick puppies and say, I'll never watch Star Trek again? No, I said, oh, I wish that movie could have been better. Here's hoping the next one is good.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's the thing that everybody should take forward is this idea that it's, speaking to both sides here, dear side that hates everything. Cool. That's fine. You can hate it. Go nuts. And it's okay if somebody else loves it. And hey, everybody that loves it, that's cool too. Wonderful. It's okay if somebody else hates it. It's even okay if they go out and they say they hate it. That's fine. Speak your mind and just accept that this is no different than pre-internet era when somebody would read Tales of the Bounty Hunters and say, what is this garbage? And then run across somebody who said, oh, I love Tales of the Bounty Hunters. That's one of the best books. Okay. You know what? Agree to disagree. I said my piece, you said your piece. Let's just be friends and walk away. It's all right. I don't know. I'm not trying to get like all soapboxy with it, but it's just, it's one of those things where, seriously, you look at this list. If you don't, like, I think their batting average is even a little bit better, like a 70-30. You think it's 60-40, I think it's 70-30. Okay. If that doesn't work for you, if you demand 1,000%, if you will not cheer for your team unless they win the World Cup or they win the Super Bowl or they win the World Series, and you will not cheer for your team and that is it, guess what? Do what I did with pro football. Walk away.
Yeah.
It's cool, Bear. That's fine. No problem.
No, I think it's a great point. And I think one of the things that I guess partly in this discussion and actually thinking about what we would talk about, you know, for the last few days and even in the last week, it's something that had been percolating in my mind, was that with what's coming out, with what's been greenlit and everything, it almost does seem to me as if, because the things that are actually in production or that are actually going to be released, it does seem like almost that it's taken a long time, but they might have finally found some sort of ground to stand on that might be less detrimental than Anakin having the low ground. You know, they might have at least found some middle ground here.
I'll even say this. I referenced Marvel earlier. I would rather have them have a rocky start and then figure it out and then be great for all time afterward, or at least be good, instead of what Marvel did, which was come out of the gate, guns blazing, really be great, have a couple of misses here and there, but man, that Marvel, they sure know how to make things. Marvel's untouchable. Everybody's going to spend $1 billion worth of tickets to see all of their movies. And then Marvel's trajectory, I would argue, and this doesn't mean Marvel's bad. This doesn't mean Star Wars is better as a result, as a blah, blah, blah. But you can't argue that the trajectories are diverging in a very interesting way here. I would say that Star Wars is figuring out how to be a franchise. Marvel started as a franchise, and as I'm anticipating Star Wars projects far more than I'm anticipating Marvel projects. Or, to be fair, and I know this might sting because you're a big DC guy, DC projects.
Oh, no, I'm right there with you, man. On the DC front, unfortunately.
So, you know, let's agree that no matter how you feel about the Star Wars franchise, look at DC and their film franchise. Let's not complain, okay? Maybe you got a little better than you think you do.
Could be worse, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting thing because it really does also bring me back to something Filoni said in that recent interview where he said, you know, the things that people love tend to stay in people's imaginations and really matter, and the things that don't really work tend to get thrown by the wayside. You know, I mean, nobody in their right mind considers something like the Star Wars Holiday Special canon, right? And so the things that just don't really kind of work for fans or whatever are the things that, you know, who knows if they'll get overridden or not, but they're also the things that fans don't really care to see again. And And so, and I think that's the other thing that we have to kind of remember is when you turn anything into a franchise, right, you have to be working for the middle. In some ways, you're either working to the middle towards fans. That's kind of what we're working for. But like you said too, we're not going to please every single person. That's just not possible. And so we also have to be fans that are okay with and grown up with enough to be like, hey, I don't like that thing. I think it's terrible, but I'm glad you like it. That's great. I don't have to. And that's cool too.
Absolutely. And I think that the majority of people are there. I think that another important thing is we're all lost in this hyper online morass of argument right now
Yes.
with everything.
Yeah.
And the majority of people, they get in their car and they go to work. And even me and even you who love Star Wars, we live and breathe Star Wars in our brains. Somebody brings it up at work, people will roll their eyes because I can go on a diatribe. We're at lunch and somebody brings up, oh, well, Star Wars this. And I'm like, well, the thing is, and everybody goes, oh boy, here we go.
Right.
But even I have better things to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like The Acolyte. Thought it was a poorly made show. We're both on record with that. Do you know how much time I spend thinking about The Acolyte or pronouncing Star Wars dead? 0.0%. Yep. I have moved on. You have moved on. I can't even remember when the last season of Stranger Things actually aired.
Yeah.
But season 5's coming up.
Yeah.
All right.
Apparently it is.
Yeah. Vecna will be financing their subprime mortgages, and that will be the horror of season 5 of Stranger Things. But, it's like, let's accept the fact that the majority of people in the world, even people who love or hate a piece of entertainment, they're able to contextualize it and say, yeah, it's a piece of entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
think
what?
That's a great point.
So there's so many movies I love that will never get love or a sequel or anything like that. And I still love them. And there are movies that I hate that got many sequels, like Michael Bay's Transformers movies.
Yeah.
I just have to live in that world. I'll tell you what I think of them if you ask me. But outside of that, don't really think about it too much.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting thing to me, this whole discussion. And in the end, again, to bring it back to that Star franchise that we've brought up a bunch, there are series there that I can't stand, I don't like, and I don't watch because I don't like them. And that's fine with me. I watch certain series there that I do like, and I'm okay with that. So I hope, one of the things that I do kind of hope with Star Wars is that, again, the batting average here, like you mentioned, it's pretty stinking good, guys. And, the things that I don't like are easy for me to not worry about. And so I would rather my batting average be this, than most franchises. And so, and even like you said, even those series that I don't love, like an Obi-Wan Kenobi or a Book of Boba Fett, there are things in there that I found that I did enjoy, that I did like, that I did think were well done. And I think that, heck, Force Awakens, even there are parts of The Rise of Skywalker, The Last Jedi is at least beautifully shot. So
I'll never take that away. The cinematography,
it's phenomenal,
is
right?
Phenomenal in that film.
Yeah.
The cinematography is.
So that's the thing, right? Is that there can be little things that we can even find in all of those we like. But what's exciting about this is we got some great things coming up in Star Wars. To look forward to, like we've mentioned, Skeleton Crew. We've got the season 2 of Andor coming out, the Grogu, the Mandalorian Grogu film, and then a season 2 of Ahsoka. And we're sure there are probably somewhere working on another animated something. But I think what you said is really important for us to remember. Guys, social media is not real life. Like what you like, don't like what you don't like, and just move on with your life. It's totally okay.
Totally fine.
You know, and get used to being able to have discussions with fans where you can say, you know what, I don't really like that, and here's the reasons why. And or you can be like, you can also say something like, you know, this is the reason I do like that series. But be ready to have just an honest, open, and loving conversation, because what the world needs now is Star Wars love, sweet Star Wars love, and not hate. So let's spread that instead.
And just to keep referencing other franchises, if I can spend my life being a fan of the Halloween franchise, and Michael Myers will always be my boogeyman, and I can say that after watching Halloween Ends, trust me, you'll make it through the next Star Wars project you don't like as well. But you know what? This is 2 episodes in a row where we've gone a little longer than usual, Master Rushing. I love it. I love it. This is the content people tune in for. But where can people tune in to your content out there in the wilds of the internet?
Well, you can find me all over the place on social media under the name Matt Rushing 02. Of course, you can also find me here on the network with a completed show called Owl Post, talking about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. You can also find me over on the TFM network with a bunch of shows. The main one there that you'll find me on, of course, is the 602 Club, talking about all of those franchises we love outside of Star Trek. John's a frequent guest over there, and we love getting a chance to talk about all sorts of stuff for you. But John, you know, if people want to catch up with you and seeing what you're putting on your Nerf steak these days, where can people find you?
Oh, my goodness. You know what I put on my Nerf steak every single time? Is a nice big pad of Gungan butter, and I'll let your brain figure out what that means. But you can find me as Kessel Junkie out there on the wilds of the internet, and you can find me right here on the network, co-hosting a show with Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell called House Lights, where we look at the work of directors. We look at some controversial directors too, like Oliver Stone. Maybe there was a conspiracy involved. I don't know. But speaking of conspiracies, we have to find out who left the iron on the ironing board in the laundry room of the Jedi Temple. So, Master Rushing, I think it's time to close these negotiations.
Master Mills, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.